Good afternoon, everyone. We are back, and man, have I missed you guys. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world right now. It is 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, New York time, and that means it's time for Happy Hour Live. Good evening again. I'm Mark Gillespie in the WhiskyCast studio in New Jersey, and it's been a couple of months since we've done this, and I got to tell you, I'm feeling a whole lot better right now, and was able to start doing these after the holidays. And I'm glad we took the time off to come back and do this the right way. But as Dave Kuhn has just pointed out in the chat room, well, together at last. And can't wait to hear your comments and read them in the chat room online. Feel free to go ahead and share whatever thoughts you have. We have a bunch of them here. Dave Kuhn saying, of course, go Dogs from Georgia. He was in Indianapolis for the college football championship game the other night. And let's just see who else we have on here. Tyrone Cote, good evening all from a soon-to-be snowstorm-covered Nova Scotia. Very appropriate since we're going to talk a lot about Canadian whiskeys tonight. I am joined right now by our pals Davin de Kergommeaux from CanadianWhisky.org and the Canadian Whisky Awards, and Billy Abbott from the Whiskey Exchange. And Billy, he just published the new book, The Philosophy of Whisky. How are you guys?
Well, I'm doing great.
Billy? Billy? Oh, wait a second here. Let's see. I'm sorry. You're muted, Billy.
After 2 years of sitting on calls like this, you thought I might have a clip. Hello, I'm doing fine. It's a lovely evening here in London. So, yeah, deliberate, obviously.
Oh, that's fine. So what do you guys have in your glasses tonight?
I'm drinking from a Canadian Club glass. I'm drinking water. I'm totally baked from being up all night with the awards, trying to get some sleep, and then spending the whole day dealing with media today. So I'm drinking water. And it's not the water that Sir John A. Macdonald used to drink in the House of Commons either. This is actual real water.
And we'll talk about the media onslaught. Billy, go ahead.
I would say I have a gin glass which I'm drinking water out of because I'm in London, so obviously no, I'm just surveying my big pile of samples here at the moment. I was running around trying to find something appropriately Canadian to drink, and I do not have enough Canadian whiskey in my house, so I'm feeling slightly bereft. But I'm gonna have a dig around and find something interesting to have a taste of in a moment.
Well, I'm drinking one of the gold medal winners from last night's Canadian Whisky Awards, the Crown Royal 18 years old, that's brand new. And a bottle may pop up here anytime in the next 10, 15 minutes or so, because the Canadian Whisky of the Year is on its way, courtesy of Diageo. They arranged for a drizzly delivery that I was told about half an hour ago was in the next town over and on its way. But Davin, tell us about the Canadian Whisky of the Year, the Crown Royal Noble Collection Winter Wheat Edition. What was it about this one that impressed you and the other judges?
This is just such a spectacular whiskey. It's beautifully balanced, as Crown Royals always are. It's very, very complex. You can taste like wheat. You can taste like Wonder Bread or something in there. It's got nuttiness from barley. And you know that elegance that the best Canadian whiskeys have that comes from using that corn-based whiskey. Man, it's just full of that. It's very complex, beautifully balanced. But at the same time, it's like one unit. You can suss out all these notes, but it is an entity unto itself. It's got a beautiful syrupy feel on your tongue, nice medium body weight. It's got a lot of really interesting flavors in there. It's got tertiary flavors like tobacco. You can taste like pipe tobacco with maybe the port finished pipe tobacco. You got some prunes and dark fruits, but also you've got fresh fruit and you've got some lovely floral notes on top. It's just, that sounds like a lot, and you don't want everything, but it's beautifully balanced and so tightly integrated. It just stood out from the crowd. This whiskey, it really is really quite a wonderful whiskey, and I'm really delighted that they would consider entering a whiskey of that caliber in our competition.
What did you and your judges think of the this 18-year-old? I like it.
It's a wonderful whiskey. It's a really beautiful whiskey. It has more age on it. It tastes like it has more age on it. So it's got a little it's got a little more of the the old barrel tones. They're not tannic and they're not woody, but they're more the tones you get from older barrels. It's really quite a great whiskey. Honestly, I think that they really outdid themselves. The Crown Royal did this year. It's a wonderful whiskey, but man, they really killed it. Crown Royal sells more Canadian whiskey than the next 6 top-selling whiskeys combined, and there's just no question about why it is so popular. It's a beautifully made whiskey, really synthesized, reliable. Every bottle is going to be great. So it's well, I'd say with the exception of the mesquite, but
yeah, we don't discuss the Crown Royal mesquite.
It's a great whiskey.
Billy, tell us what went into writing the philosophy of whiskey. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Davin. Go ahead.
No. Let's hear from Billy because I'm interested in this.
Yeah. What went into writing this, Billy? It's an interesting little book.
It's a bit of a weird one. We had the joys of everybody was quite busy last year working from home, and I didn't get a chance to go on holiday, and so I had lots of vacation days saved up at work. And a friend of mine gave me a call and said, you know how I've been trying to get you to write a book for the past decade? It's like, well, yeah, I have lots of notebooks. They got bits and pieces in. He's like, yeah, well, someone's approached me to write a book and I can't do it. I've told him you can. So when can you start? And basically, it was just a 6-week, really short period. I had holiday from work. I took time off work, and in between training people and writing, I had 6 weeks to put together this little book, which I had to cut down loads because you've read my stuff before. I write generally slightly too much and talk too much, and I'm slightly wordy. But it was just an editing process of sort of editing it down, and it's not a very big book. It's like a nice little book. It's published by the British Library as part of a series of books all about the philosophy of things. I've lost my other copies. They started a book called Philosophy of Beards, which was a reprint of a book from the middle of the 1800s by a gentleman who believed that if a gentleman does not wear a beard, he is showing a sign of moral failing. And it's quite funny. It's very much of its time. It's a very strange little book, and it was so popular they commissioned philosophy of other things. So we now have whiskey, but we also have beer and gin and wine and tattoos and coffee and tea. And yeah, so they wanted another one to do with alcohol. Got in touch with a friend of mine, he got in touch with me, and this is the little thing that appeared at the end of it. So yeah, it was released on October the 14th in the UK and pretty much the whole of the world, apart from North America. And for some reason, the special North American version, which as far as I know is exactly the same as this one, appears on May the 1st.
And it'll be available through all those usual online retailers and local booksellers. We prefer the local booksellers around here. But the Whiskey Ferry just arrived with the winter wheat. Only 10 minutes past the 5 o'clock deadline that Drizzly had. So I'll open this up in just a few minutes. But
excellent.
What did we do before delivery of whiskeys? I mean, what a concept. I mean, there's not a lot of philosophy in this book, Billy, but it's more of a good primer for newcomers to whiskey, right?
It's a bit of a couple of different things, because somebody asked me what my philosophy of whiskey was, and one thing that didn't make it into the final book is every chapter's got a quote at the front of it, and I went through trying to find loads of relevant quotes and from other people and their thoughts on whiskey. But my original quote, there was 2 of them, one of which said, above all, share and enjoy, and underneath it just said share and enjoy. And the first one is the motto of Compass Box Whiskey. Above all, share and enjoy is Compass Box's founding idea. And underneath it was the share and enjoy, which is the slogan of the cybernetics, the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who make a series of incredibly awful machines and robots who do not cause any form of enjoyment in anybody's life. So somebody said to me a little while back, what is your philosophy of whiskey? And it's very much that. It's share and enjoy. And what I tried to do with the book is a very, very light sort of, you say, beginning thing, but also talk about the history and talk about how whiskey is woven into our society and how you can use whiskey as a way of looking at the way that the world, society of a large amount of the world has come together, and technologies and the way that people interact and everything like that can all be sort of reflected through whiskey. So there's almost some philosophy in there, but not quite.
We have a question for you, and despite all this discussion about whiskey, our viewers have one thing on their minds, and they want to know what's in the background here. So Chris Ratcliffe is going, is that Adam West's Batman behind you?
Of course, this is my my signed photo of Adam West as Batman, complete, of course, with a certificate of authenticity, because Batman looks after me as I work. He watches over me.
Did you sign that yourself, Billy?
No, this is actually, it's a present from my little brother for my 21st birthday. So it's been up there for a while now, and the certificate of authenticity on the back has now faded away, so you can't actually see any of it anymore. But yes, he sits there quietly in the background.
So, Davin, were there any surprises in the awards last night? What? Because I know that the way this works is that your wife, Janet, actually puts the samples together and puts numbers on them. So even you don't know what is what. What surprised you guys when you did the reveal?
Well, it was interesting. You know, it was kind of like a horse race, because, or like an election or something I've said before, because, you know, the results don't all come in at the same time. But as they come in, I put them into the spreadsheet. And it's laid out so that it calculates the averages, and you can see, you know, that whiskeys were shuffling and things like this. At one point, I thought that Canadian Club 100% rye was going to be the high-scoring rye whiskey. It was just jostling in the end. And there was another one too that was really right in there, but in the end, of course, it went to Shelter Point, and Shelter Point, you know, just took off. It was like a horse race, you know, where the horse just takes off at the end and passes everyone and crosses the finish line. That was kind of cool. I really saw Crown Royal really just kind of really showed beautifully this time. And of course, it's different judges every time, not all different, but you do see things changing like that. I think that there were two things that really kind of surprised me in a very pleasant way. First of all, it's the first time that we've had entries from Okanagan Spirits. And Okanagan Spirits, I remember Frank Dieter back there 20 years ago with Okanagan Spirits. He's gone now, and you know, the family has taken it on themselves, and they're doing that, a wonderful job. But they entered for the first time, and man, their whiskeys are wonderful. They won, you know, Artisanal Distillery of the Year. You know, there are always some favorites in there, and I hadn't tasted these whiskeys in competition before. I certainly know their whiskeys, and they really did well. The other thing is that this year we had a number of distilleries that took maple syrup casks. Once the syrup's gone and they're emptied out, it's like emptying a sherry cask or something like that, and they filled them with malt spirit or filled them with some kind of whiskey spirit. And one of those from Odd Society in Vancouver, it won Best New Whiskey. It really was outstanding. And you'd think that maple syrup might be a little bit sweet, but it wasn't. But what you do get is you get those woody notes. You know, when you get the tones like Sotalon, which they call it. You know, it's kind of like fenugreek when you cook it or something like that. But anyways, you get those notes that really just meld beautifully with the barrel tones in the whiskey itself. And so it really, those two things really surprised me. They really did. It was just, and yet, you know, that I guess I could go on all night if you guys don't mind. But you know, that Wisest Red Letter 15-year-old, they've hit the sweet spot, and I thought they'd hit the sweet spot before. That's a beauty. It really is a gorgeous whiskey. So yeah, it really did. It really was quite a event. And you're right, Janet does all the work. I get the credit, but Janet does all the work here, and Heather does all the work in Victoria, and I just show up at the last minute and smile. But yeah, so it really was fun going through this year. So many new competitors this year. So many really great, wonderful whiskeys. So
looking through the list of medal winners from last night, it looks like it looks like the overall quality of Canadian whiskey has improved, because there were medal winners that I saw in the gold and silver ranks last night that were winning bronzes a few years ago, and it looks like they've stepped up their game.
Yeah, I'm glad you see it that way, Mark, because I agree. Those bronze medal winners are every bit as good as they were when they were gold medal winners, But yes, there's new things coming. But the other thing is there's a trend towards whiskeys that are bigger. We're going back to the old days of Canadian whiskey when it had, big robust whiskeys like that, Canadian Masterpiece I had from the 70s that I was waving around a couple of weeks ago. And we're also getting much more of the elegance of Canadian whiskey in there, much more of that elegant base whiskey in there. And they're going towards that. And what we're seeing is that these whiskeys, a shock and awe whiskey doesn't do it as it might have done a few years ago. It now has to have that elegance, that complexity. It has to be a synthesis of many things. So it really is changing. So people's tastes are changing. But you're absolutely right. The quality is heading in the right direction. It's heading up. But at the same time, that is not and does not take anything away from those wonderful whiskeys that, Confederation Oak, which was our whiskey of the decade. Just a consistent year over year winner or first or gold medalist, and it's changing. But I mean, whiskey's all changing. Bourbon changing, rye changing, Scotch whiskey is certainly changing. It's funny, I up on my mantle, I thought somebody would notice, but they didn't. I've got an old Canadian whiskey up there that's a big, massive corn whiskey. I'll just get it.
And I'm going to tell you, while he's getting that, I'm sipping this winter wheat. This is good. You were right about it being full of flavor and a big whiskey, but still having the elegance. This is good.
I'd hope so.
I'm very impressed. Well, we have to get Billy some of this.
Yeah. This is the thing which always annoys me about the Canadian Whisky Awards, is that you come up with this big list of whiskies and there's like 4 of them available in Europe. We're getting better. There's more coming over here. But I've been over to do the awards a couple of times. And the thing which always shocked me was how many whiskies that I've never even seen, and in some places I hadn't even heard of before. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. I shall see if I can get my contacts to help me out.
And Watchman 999 is the Crown Royal Wintry Wheat, as he puts it, actually non-chill filtered and no color. Could it be true? Davin? Do you know the answer to that?
Could be.
Could be.
I thought we put that argument to bed 10 years ago.
Yeah. And then Dave Kuhn in Georgia. How is the Crown Royal Northern Harvest dry aged in the eyes of the whiskey crowd since its accolades a few years back? We've had discussions about that one. I don't think it was the best one they released that year, but it was still a good whiskey.
It was a great whiskey. I don't think it is in the same realm as the winter wheat. It's not. I mean, Crown Royal Northern Harvest Rye is a wonderful, in Canada, $35 whiskey. I don't know how much it costs in the States, but in Canada, it's $35. And it's a very good bang for the buck. And it's great whiskey. It's got that beautiful crispness to it. It's really wonderful. Now, it's also 90% rye or 95% rye whiskey. Winter wheat is $100 in Canada, and you get 3 times the whiskey. And I mean, that's just that's the way it goes. But all of Crown Royal is heading in that direction. If you try any of them, it's just Crown Royal really kind of set the bar for Canadian whiskey. They've got all kinds of wonderful high-end whiskeys, but most people taste the entry level and then they kind of stop. They don't go on to the more expensive ones. But I mean, Canadian whiskey is either blended according to the processes that were established by Sam Bronfman, well, before the 70s, or else it's trying to be Crown Royal and not succeeding. You know, he really, Seagram's and Sam Bronfman really put Canadian whiskey into the next rank. And Crown Royal still, as I say, is still the most popular Canadian whiskey. We have some fabulous whiskeys up here from other brands, as you know. But you know, yeah, I think you're comparing apples and oranges with Northern Harvest Rye and Winter Wheat. Northern Harvest Rye, there was a lot of buzz that gave it false, that got it into the wrong hands, let's say. You know, when people were paying $200 for a bottle of Northern Harvest Rye, I think they were on the black market or the gray market. I think that generated some less than healthy commentary, because for $200 it's maybe a little bit expensive.
John Kalinowski has a question for you, Davin. By the way, this winter wheat, $67.99 in the U.S. today. That's a relative bargain. John Kalinowski wants you to, Davin, to please expound on the Confederation Oak from 40 Creek. He brought back a couple of bottles of 40 Creek Confederation Oak Reserve from BC and loved it. And the Confederation Oak is actually finished in Canadian oak, right?
It's absolutely done in Canadian oak. It's amazing. You know John Hall, and probably your viewers know of John Hall, who founded 40 Creek. He's an interesting guy. He really is, and just like incredibly passionate about Canadian whiskey. We're still in touch regularly talking about whiskey. And he was driving by a conservation area, and they had cut down 3 massive big oak trees there, because they do, you know, they manage the forest. You know, it's the government, and they're going to do it absolutely right. So they had these 3 great big oak trees, and he went in and said, "Who do I see? I want to buy these oak trees." So he loaded them onto a truck, sent them down to Missouri, and they made barrels out of these. And it was Canadian oak, grown in Canada, tight grain. You know, it's cold a lot of the time up here, and the trees they don't get as big and as porous, and so they grow more slowly. So they made barrels out of this, and he then took some barrel select whiskey and put it into these barrels. And after a year, he tasted it, and he said he thought he was going to have to redistill it. And a year later, he said, "Gee, this doesn't taste so bad." And eventually, he got to the point where it was like this sensational whiskey. And you know, they're in oak, but it tastes like maple syrup almost in that. And they bottled this up, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful whiskey. So then, what do you do? Because he only had 3 trees to make those barrels, so they did it again, and did the same whiskey, and they used the same barrels. And lo and behold, batch B came out even better than batch A, and it matured a little more quickly too. So it was already mature whiskey when it went in. So they started then getting other oaks that were being harvested in Ontario. You know, they cut the tree down so that the saplings have room to grow, and it's become kind of one of their core whiskeys. And it's just year after year after year. It's been like gold medals in the Canadian Whisky Awards. I think it won Whisky of the Year one year. And so it was our Whisky of the Decade after 10 years of the Canadian Whisky Awards. I'm glad that it was John who enjoyed that, because it is fabulous whiskey. It's really well made. And it just resonates. But like all 40 Creek whiskeys do, you want to sit there with a friend and follow Billy Abbott's philosophy and enjoy this whiskey while doing it.
Billy, I want to share a bit of an excerpt here, and I'm not going to read the whole thing.
I'm sorry, Billy.
But from the first chapter, where you say, what is whiskey? And It comes down to a succession of poor things of other things, which finally come good when you stop messing about with them. And I'm going to edit the steps down here. Step 1, make some bad porridge. Step 2, use your porridge to make some bad beer. Step 3, distill your beer to make bad vodka. And step 4, stick your vodka in a cask and forget about it. And then you get good whiskey out of it all, right?
It's the way I've been sort of telling people about whiskey. It really is. If you look at every single step, you start off with the worst porridge ever, and then you end up with something which you have to forget about, because if you start digging in there early, it doesn't taste any good. But no, this is a bit of a if you've been to a tasting of mine, you're supposed to me about whiskey, you've heard a lot of this before. However, still go and buy a copy of the book. It's very, very good. But yeah, it's a distillation of a lot of the things I've been talking to people about, the way I talk about whiskey. And you say the philosophy of whiskey, it's like you said, Davin, it's my philosophy. Really, it's how you talk about what it is, how you do it. There's a whole lot of stuff in there about nosing and tasting. But the big thing for me, I've been telling people is that I wrote it's right at the back of it, outside of all this, I've got a couple of pages of further reading, which is a list of all the people whose work, one, they're not ripped off, been inspired by and used for research. It's got here Canadian whiskey, a certain D. de Kergommeaux Canadian whiskies listed about here. It's almost like there's somebody who wrote literally the book on Canadian whiskey. I've got the other one there.
The award-winning book on Canadian whiskey.
The award of the two books I've read on Canadian whiskey, the other one being Davin's other book on Canadian whiskey. I found a third one now. I've been researching and finding historical books on Canadian whiskey as well. I've got another one called Drunk, I do believe, something like that. But no, it's that list there is the thing I should say. I've now put up on my website, so you don't even need to buy the book really. But a list of all the other books, and it's really a case of this has taken all the things I've read, all the things I've learned, and try to bring them all together in like a nice, easily digestible nugget that you can sort of get through with a couple of drams, and then find out even more stuff to learn.
Your description of how whiskey is made sort of reminds me of the way our mutual friend Ian Logan describes haggis. You take the best parts of the sheep, the best cuts of meat, throw them out and use whatever's left, and then use that to make the haggis with. And it still comes out tasting pretty good. I like haggis. But it reminded me of that when I was reading it.
Yeah, it seems to be almost a strange tradition in Scotland of trying to find the most meager leftover bits and making them into fantastic things, and they many great successes in such a thing. If you've ever had a square sausage sandwich, you don't ask what's in a square sausage. You don't want to know. It doesn't taste like the sausage that you're used to, but you eat it in a sandwich and it's great, and your hangover goes away quite quickly. It's a marvelous thing.
Chris Ratcliffe has a question for you, Billy, and we can address this to Davin as well. Is the UK not a high priority export market for Canada? Obviously, the US is the big export market, but is the UK not a high priority?
Oh, worryingly, I think we are a higher priority than it might seem. We don't get very much stuff over here. We've always got Crown Royal and Canadian Club, and I know the Whiskey Exchange for years have been. We can find, I think, Canadian Club you can find in supermarkets. Crown Royal, a few places had, and I've got all over my flat. I've got Crown Royal bags for storing every form of cable under the sun. It's an excellent bag. I didn't grow up with these like a lot of Canadian kids did, but I've got friends of mine from Canada who just say, "Oh yeah, you always have some of those around the house. What do you mean you don't have Crown Royal bags?" There we go. Yeah, but increasingly we are, and one of the things we had a little while back, sister company of the Whiskey Exchange, Specialty Brands, who's in the process of separating to its own totally separate thing. They got the agency for some of the Corby whiskies. So Lot 40 started coming over. We now have some Wisers coming over as well. Pike Creek. Lot 40 and Pike Creek. Lot 40 not so much now, but Pike Creek started appearing in supermarkets. So it's trying to get Canadian whiskey into the public eye and trying to get Canadian whiskey a higher sort of profile. And we are getting some of the smaller brands now. But yeah, no, we're not quite there yet. It's getting better, As I said, when I first came over about 10 years ago to the Canadian Whisky Awards, I knew nothing about Canadian whiskey and had never heard of them. This time I heard a load of more of them. But still, there's loads of stuff appearing in Canada. And I've always keep on telling people that outside of Ireland, which is exciting for big explosion, Canada's exciting for just doing weird and wonderful things you don't see anywhere. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily go all that far. I'm hoping one day we get a load more of it over here in the UK. But yeah, sorry, actually, Chris, well, scarily, we're actually quite a high priority market for Canada, but that doesn't mean we still get all that much as far as I know.
And as far as Crown Royal bags, there's a photo that we had on the website of a guy at the Wonderful World of Whiskey show in Cornwall a couple of years ago. Davin, you remember the guy that had the suit made out of Crown Royal bags?
Oh, I remember seeing it, but I can't remember the guy.
I remember that. I've got a picture of it somewhere. We'll post that on social media. But he had an entire suit. He took him. His mother-in-law made it for him, I think. She took an entire ton of these Crown Royal bags and turned it into a suit for the guy, and it was just it was interesting. Dave Kuhn has a question for you, Davin. Wasn't it Canadian whiskey that was a major culprit during Prohibition, or is he putting too much stock in history depicted in Kevin Costner movies?
I don't know what a culprit, what you mean by a culprit. I know that Canadian whiskey was the only whiskey that was available for Americans to drink during the American Civil War. So and I know that it became very popular. I know that Canada was we provided a fair bit of whiskey to the States, but Canadian distilleries went broke during Prohibition. You know, there were only a few, like Seagram's really expanded during Prohibition. That's when it became a major global enterprise, and I think that's one of the reasons why Canadian whiskey is so great today. But I mean, most of the others, well, I guess Hiram Walker did okay. They did fine, and to some degree, but and of course the Reader distilleries were nobody has ever heard of them now, but they were really great. But I wouldn't say that we were a culprit. People bought whiskey in Canada and sold it in the States, and because of the way the American laws were at the time, it was a crime to do that. But Americans did come to their senses and realize that people are going to drink, like it or not, and it's now no longer illegal to send Canadian whiskey to America. So not much has changed except the distribution channels, except that we lost 90% of our business because America has always been the biggest market for Canadian whiskey. It still is. And, then most of that market dried up. So, we had, Goodrum and Warts teetering on bankruptcy. And, it really... So I'm not sure I don't understand the word culprit. We provided.
I think he's explaining
it for a lot of others. A lot of the business.
I think he's using that term facetiously in terms of culprit. I don't think he means culprit.
Who could it have been supplying all this whiskey flowing gently over a border just to the south, Yeah,
but the truth is a lot more Irish whiskey made it into the States during Prohibition than Canadian whiskey. A lot more Irish whiskey made it in, and some of it came through Canada. And a fair bit of Scotch made it into America as well. You think of some of the prime movers and shakers in Canada were Scotsmen or Irishmen, and who came here specifically to take advantage of that because the Canadian distillers were just didn't want to get involved in criminal activity. So, we certainly provided a lot of whiskey, but so did Ireland and so did Scotland.
Let's talk about something positive, really, in the last several years, the last 10 years, really, the growth of Canadian single malts. BMO wants to know if anybody has a discount code for Shelter Point, which won the Canadian Single Malt of the Year last night, right?
All of their whiskeys are about 25% off what they should cost. So there's a secret. You don't need a code. You don't need a discount code to get them for less than they're worth. Shelter Point makes fabulous whiskey. They really do. And the other one that's just really wonderful, Two Brewers in the Yukon. Man, Two Brewers makes great stuff. I'm not sure they're available in the States, but wow, just, hey, thank you, Dave, making me feel better there. Taking me off the defensive. Listen, I've been up for like 36 hours. Shelter Point is a wonderful distillery. They're mature too, you know. I mean, they have a 10-year-old single malt out there. It wasn't their most popular. But, you know, you go to some of the others as well, you know. But last night, Okanagan Spirits, man, their single malt is fabulous. Some of the stuff in the East as well, you know, I still am a big fan of Stock and Barrel from Barry and Barry. You know those guys, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, we've got some great single malts here. Really world class.
And we had Bob Baxter from Two Brewers in Yukon out on the webcast before the end of the year last fall, and those whiskeys are. I need to get back out to Whitehorse only because it's been 25 years since I've been to Whitehorse. Before I was into whiskey, and I need to get back out and visit those guys. Spirit Bomb. Tabitha in the UK wants to know if her relatives in Ontario can pick up the whiskeys we're talking about at the LCBO.
Give yourself a few days.
I want to go out now while it's 40 below in Whitehorse and go out and visit out there now. So most of this stuff I would assume is available at the LCBO, right?
Well, you know, I think that I'm pretty sure that Winter Wheat will have sold out today after winning the award last night. LCBO, I tried to buy some more, and LCBO was sold out in Ottawa. They wouldn't ship any to me from Toronto. So I think if you're in Toronto, you may be able to still buy it today or tomorrow, but I think it's going pretty quickly. I'm trying to think some of the other whiskeys. The 18-year-old, they still have lots of the 18-year-olds, Crown Royal 18-year-old. Shelter Point is not in Ontario, so you can't get it here. But I'm sure if you talk to Kensington Wine Market, they can get you pretty much anything you want in Canada, and they're very, very good about that. Some great whiskeys. I mean. But you can't count on the LCBO for anything, quite honestly.
And on that note, Kevin DeVries, an employee at a local LCBO store, poo-pooed the resurgence of the craft whiskey distillers like Dillon's due to their price point. Any thoughts? First of all, I wouldn't take anything anybody at the LCBO says as gospel when it comes to whiskeys, because I've seen their whiskey selections, and frankly, they could do a whole hell of a lot better, right, Davin?
They could do a whole hell of a lot better, but I have to say that some of their staff are really quite knowledgeable. When you're buying craft whiskey, you're paying for whiskey that is made by hand. It is different. If you expect that this is going to taste like whiskey from the large distilleries, then you may well walk away disappointed. But I don't think that it's that the whiskey is not as good. I think you are paying for an artisanal product, and you are paying for something that is unique, and it comes in small batches. But I also think that people's palates, people learn what to like. And I think that people have learned to like a certain style of whiskey. It's going to take them a while to warm up to the others. More adventurous people will do so. Watchman 999's cracking me up. That's
yep.
But if they don't want to buy Dillon's, cool. Dillon's is going to sell every bottle they make. Other people love it.
I'm trying to remember. Dillon's is fairly new. I've not had the chance to try them. They've just come out sort of recently in the last couple of years, right?
They've been in the awards when you were a judge, Mark.
Okay.
So,
I've got to go back and check then, because they don't strike a memory to me.
Yeah, they are. Quite honestly, their rye is maturing nicely. It really is. They've recently been bought by a major firm, so I think you're going to see some changes happening there.
We did have a question from a listener, and I'm trying to pull it up here, from somebody wanting to know what your 2021 whiskeys of the year were. And Billy, what was your 2021 whiskey of the year? We know, I'm assuming, Davin, this Crown Royal was yours just from the Canadian Whisky Awards, or did you have one that you liked better?
I love this whiskey. I can't say that there was a whiskey that I liked better, but there was a whiskey that I would buy first, and that is 40 Creek Master's Cut. I have never tasted anything like that. It's really wonderful whiskey. It certainly earned its gold medal. It was justified its gold medal. But what they did with make 40 Creek Master's Cut is they took whiskey that was fully matured. Some of it had been in barrels since 1996. They took all these different barrels of whiskey and selected the ones that would work together, blended them to make this really wonderful whiskey, and then they put it in their still and redistilled it, and then put it back in barrels for 5 years. Well, of course, the spirit that went into the still is not like raw spirit. It was already well matured. It had, congeners that had taken 25 years to develop in there. They put it back together in the barrel. It is just wonderful, wonderful whiskey. I just love it. I've managed to secure another bottle. It's nearly sold out too. I've managed to get another bottle. It's coming in. And I'm buying these bottles, by the way. This isn't free stuff. These are worth having. The same with the Crown Royal, buying that. So that was great. I really loved that.
You know what that reminds me of? I'm sorry, Davin. You know what that reminds me of with the Malt Maniacs after the Malt Maniacs competitions, the big bastard where they would take the bottle ends and redistill them out at Olivier's farm in France and blend those together. Does that remind you of sort of the same philosophy almost?
I think we did that once.
On the other end, it reminds me of there's a spirit that's made in the Isle of Man. I don't know if it's still made the same way. I know the distiller's still there. I've got a friend of mine who lives there now. But they used to buy Scottish whiskey, take it to the Isle of Man off the coast of the UK, redistill it, and then age it. And it became Manx whiskey. I've tried it on a few occasions. I've tried the unaged one. I've tried one which is aged for a couple of years. And it was one of the most terrible things I've ever drunk. So whenever I hear these tales, like, of the big bastard and things like this 40 Creek, my eyebrow is raised. But when it comes to people who could do it and do it right, the folks at 40 Creek are definitely on the list, I would say.
So, Billy, what was your whiskey of the year for last year?
As soon as I saw that question pop up, I've been sitting there thinking, try and remember all the whiskeys, because despite not having been going out loads of places, I've had more things come in, more samples. I've had more opportunity to try things because I'm just sat at my desk here rather than in the office. We've bottled some great whiskeys at the Whiskey Exchange, and the one which we just crowned our whiskey of the year. We do that by having a sort of like internal panel who choose some whiskeys. And then we do a public tasting. And this year we had, I'll show you a little sample, but the winner was Deanston 18-year-old, which is a cracking whiskey. And I was there for the in-person awards thing, and it just swept the board. There's some good whiskies in the lineup, but the Deanston 18 really stood out. But there's been some other really weird things. Like I've tried the Glenlivet 80-year-old that Gordon MacPhail have done, which was stunning and just unlike anything that should be that old. But totally the opposite end of the spectrum. I have a
little of that one left.
I have my little glasses knocking around there. But I've also the opposite end of the spectrum. I had a whiskey from Connacht Distillery in Ireland, and it's a 3-year-old bourbon matured single malt. There we go. Mark's got a bottle knocking around somewhere as well. And it's one of the best new Irish distillers single malts. Yeah, that one, the Connacht. Best new Irish distillers single malts I've tried in a long time. Lots of guys are making new whiskey in Ireland now. And that is just light and fruity and creamy in a way that is really showing off, what they can do in Ireland. So yeah, it's been loads of great things. And that's even before I get onto the weird single cast independent bottlings we've been doing at the Whiskey Exchange. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm rubbish at choosing. I might try some samples in a moment and try and come up with an answer by the end.
Watchman 999 wants to know if your friend on the Isle of Man is Ralphie by any chance. And Tabitha had a similar question. Is that Ralphie doesn't live on the Isle of Man, does he?
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah, he's
Okay.
a Glaswegian undertaker who lives on the Isle of Man. I think his brother lives down the road as well. His brother is a slightly more popular YouTuber than him, which people don't necessarily realize. Big Clive, the electronics expert. He's an excellent YouTube channel, just like Ralphie. No, my colleague Rocky Lancer, who some people might know, who worked at Berry Brothers for years, is now the secret mastermind behind the Whiskey Exchange's stock and keeping an eye on everything. He's recently moved to the Isle of Man so that he can wave at seals at lunchtime rather than waving at cars on the motorway down the road. So, yeah, he's adjusting to island life at the moment. Every now and again tells me tales of how wonderful it is to live on an island in the middle of nowhere.
Laura Shaw says, y'all need to come to Alberta. We have a great selection of whiskey, but in January you could get -40 weather. It's still worth the trek. I think Laura's trolling us because I've never heard anybody in Alberta say y'all in my life. That's a Southern term. It's if it was Alberta, it'd be, you need to come to Alberta, eh? Right, Davin?
We don't say "a" anymore. That's the Mackenzie brothers. Give me a break, eh?
I'm busting your chops and Laura's with that one too, just because.
Yeah, you do that all the time.
And Bill Ricker points out Clive and Ralphie have done some crossover videos that are amusing, and we're just having a little bit of fun here. Let's see what else we've got here in terms of comments and questions. Tyrone Coty says the SAQ is way better if you want to be insulted en français. Yeah, I could do that. Anybody who lost a connection like Watchman did, my apologies. But other folks are saying that no connection issues there. But we are going to go ahead and any final thoughts, first of all. Billy, any final thoughts? And where can people get the book? I know philosophyofwhiskey.com has it right now for those of us here in North America. You can order it like I did through Philosophy of Whisky, right?
Yeah, so philosophyofwhiskey.com is fulfilled by a Mr. B. Abbott from here. Literally, my stock is over there next to a pile of envelopes. So if you get it from there, I've got a special pen for signing things if you want things signed. But no, it's available absolutely everywhere. It's published by the British Library, like a proper publisher and everything. So yeah, words in the front there. But yeah, so you can get it from Jeff Bezos and all of his friends, as well as your local bookshops. And I was writing about this the other day. I've discovered I do actually have a local bookshop 20 minutes walk down the road from me who I need to go and have a chat with because I didn't even know they were there. So if you can order from your local bookshop, please do. Don't let local bookshops disappear. They are marvelous things, which I have always loved and always looked after me. So you can get it anywhere. But find a little place down the road, ask them nicely. But USA, 1st of May, out the rest of the world already.
But you can order it directly from Billy's website at philosophyofwhiskey.com, and the shipping prices are actually cheaper, I think, I found.
Well, I'm not making very much money, I will tell you that. But at the same time, I'm getting the book out in various places, and, it's I used to be a software engineer, and I will actually admit the reason why I did the website was to learn how to do an e-commerce website because I've never done one. It seems to work all right, so I haven't had any complaints yet.
So, Davin, where can people get a complete list of the winners if they want to go whiskey shopping?
They can go to CanadianWhisky.org, CanadianWhisky.org, and everything's there. Billy, I'm going to cancel my pre-order for your book and buy it directly from you because commercial stores aren't going to send it to me until May.
And while the post is particularly slow from the UK to the US and Canada, it will get there vaguely speedily. I've done, I would say, test orders, but some friends in common of ours have ordered it, and specifically after they said, "Can you make Canadian shipping work?" Canadian shipping works.
Canadian shipping does work with everything except whiskeys, right, Davin?
Okay, you watch. I'll have one ordered before I go to bed today.
And everybody's pointing out, telling
me?
Laura to be quiet. People are pointing out, telling Laura to be quiet about there's no whiskey in Alberta. You can't find it. There's no whiskey in Alberta, period. They don't want anybody to come to Alberta looking for whiskey. But Dave Kuhn has one final question for you.
It's true. Like, for instance, if you go into the Kensington... Okay.
Go ahead. Dave Kuhn wants to know, what's one Canadian whiskey to buy today that he probably hasn't? Is it this winter wheat or anything else? What would you recommend? And Dave's in Atlanta, by the way, so he has to deal with the Georgia liquor stores.
Well, if you can get that winter wheat, I would buy that absolutely for sure. If you can get it, I'd buy it. Well, you know what? That's I don't know. I haven't been to Georgia since I was a kid.
And we're getting folks, Tyrone says, any two brewers and a Cask-Strength Alberta Premium.
Really a bargain. I think it's a wonderful whiskey. You're going to enjoy it.
And Dave Kuhn says he is going shopping right now.
I doubt it's in the States. The Cask-Strength Alberta Premium is in some of the northern states. Yeah,
because I know that I've got a bottle of the most recent edition sitting over just about 6 feet away from me on the shelf right now. So really enjoyed that one as well. Guys, we're going to pull the plug on it for tonight after 52 minutes that you will never get back in your lifetimes again. Davin, Billy, thank you for both joining us tonight. Once again, Billy Abbott's new book is The Philosophy of Whisky, available at philosophyofwhisky.com. Davin is the founder of the Canadian Whisky Awards and the expert on all things Canadian whiskey. His book in second edition now, the award-winning Canadian Whisky, A Portable Expert, available through all of your good booksellers as well as online as well. Guys, thank you for doing this. It's great to talk to both of you. And hopefully this time next year we'll all be together in Victoria.
I hope
Definitely.
so.
That does it for tonight's episode of the Happy Hour live webcast. I want to thank once again our guests, Davin de Kergommeaux and Billy Abbott. Thank you for joining us. We will be back next Friday night, 5 p.m. New York time, 10 p.m. London time, and 2200 GMT, wherever you are in the world. Take care of yourselves. Keep wearing your masks so we can get through this stupid Omicron variant and get it over with once and for all. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon. Good night, all.